Good morning, Dr. Milton Brown. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you, Don?
I'm great. I'm great. I always take the opportunity to thank people for doing this visual recording with me because I speak to a lot of people and ask them to share with me their life story. But some people don't like doing this. So I always thank those who take the opportunity to do that. So thank you very much. I'm just going to go through an introduction to your marvelous life here and read to the public a little bit about yourself. Dr. Milton Brown, MA, DIP, LFL, Associate, CIPD. After leaving the Royal Air Force in 1986, he dedicated himself to education and sharing knowledge. He's a qualified and experienced organizational development consultant with an unwavering passion for empowering individuals and driving positive change. With 30 years of providing accredited leadership, training, and development, he has honed his skills in diverse sectors, private, public, and third sector organizations. Milton's journey has taken him from educational institutions at every level, both domestically and internationally, to coaching senior managers and young business startups, guiding them towards becoming progressive entrepreneurs and leaders. In recognition of his dedication to communities, he was honored with a fellowship placement in Geneva by the esteemed United Nations Geneva HQ during the International Year of People of African Descent in 2011. This experience ignited a fire within him, leading him to establish Kirklees Local TV, a grassroots digital TV station amplifying the voices of West Yorkshire's diverse and marginalised communities. Through this platform, they foster civic engagement and promote social change. Adding to his expertise, Milton completed his PhD in history and philosophy in 2023. His groundbreaking doctoral thesis titled The Illegitimate Son of England, an Auto-ethnographic study navigating race and constructing identity from the 1960s to present, an accompanying award-winning film, Windrush, the Years After, a Community Legacy on film that delves deep into the complexities of race, identity, and the profound impact on society. Milton states that he owes his deep-rooted commitment to equality and inclusion to the invaluable influence of his parents. Their teachings have shaped him into the humble yet confident advocate that he is today. Dr. Brown, again, thank you so much. That's absolutely amazing, sir. Wow. Wow. So, again, welcome aboard. I'm going to go through a series of questions with you just to take you on a life journey to let the public know a little bit about yourself. So, the first question I'm going to ask you, sir, is where were you born?
I was born in Huddersfield, 1961, at Princess Royal Hospital. It's knocked down. Well, it hasn't been knocked down. It's a whole new, different place now than what it used to be. It was a maternity ward in Huddersfield at the time.
Wow. And I believe, were your parents born here as well?
No, my mum and my dad's from Jamaica. My dad came here in 1958. My mother came here in 1960 with my sister, Millicent. She was 3 years of age when my sister arrived here, and I was born in 61. And I have a brother who was born in 62.
Okay, so you have a brother and a sister. So where do you fall within that age range?
I'm the second born problem child, I guess everybody who's in the middle child will know middle child syndrome. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what was your experience of growing up in Huddersfield then, in terms of a youngster going to school from junior school to senior school? What was that like?
Well, growing up in Huddersfield, and before I move on, I love my town. I love the the borough I live in, Kirklees. However, but in the 1960s, it was very challenging. Navigating the Teddy Boys, navigating the skinheads, um, going to school. I think I went to two great schools, but the curriculum at that time, the national curriculum, didn't really inspire anybody of my generation. Little Black Sambo, 10 Little Niggers, Noddy and Golly. Even then, I wasn't comfortable at school. There was something telling me this ain't right. And that's through from 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years of age, all the way through junior school, especially in secondary school. I just knew that the curriculum wasn't enriching me in the way it should have been. And lack of self-esteem, lack of confidence. I focused my entire schooling on becoming a sportsman because that was the only place I felt it was equal. It was the only place I felt I had control of excellence. So, I ran Yorkshire County Trials, cricket county trials, basketball county trials. I played football for my county and also my town, Huddersfield, not Huddersfield town, but Huddersfield as a borough. I think school was good. When I reflect on my schooling, it was what it was in terms of the national curriculum in the 60s and 70s. It was what it was. We had some great teachers, but even when I look back on my teachers, I would say the majority of my Black school, African, Caribbean, British-born school friends, we were schooled for the sports field. And many of
Just to interrupt you a little bit there, how did you balance? How do you feel the balance was between your sporting world in school and the academic side? Was there anything like an equal balance, or was it very much the opposite?
it's interesting, and it's interesting the question because I had a wonderful history teacher. She called Mrs. Nutman, and it's interesting. I've just finished my PhD in history, so when I look at those connections, the balance was more sport. I mean, 4 years on the bounce, I won the Sports Boy of the Year. Never lost a race in the 1500 in 5 years. I was an athlete. It was the only place where I felt I had a purpose and where I knew I could control my own destiny. I didn't think I could do that inside the classroom. And like I said, the books that they were asking us to read back then, I wasn't really excited about them at all.
Well, that's really interesting. Would you say that on balance, that was the same for the rest of the Black youngsters in the school? Would you say that?
I would like to
From your
think,
perception.
yeah. I would like to think, particularly in my school, of course, we had Black achievers in my school, but a lot of us, we had Black academic achievers in my school, but majority of us achieved on the sports field, on the track, on the rugby field. Our sports teachers they just loved us. And there was a school further up the road called Deaton High School. And that was purely, although it was a great school, a lot of my peers at that school went on to some great things in athletics and sports and various other things. So look, the teachers did as best as they could under the circumstances of what the national curriculum was demanding them to teach. And we've moved
Okay.
on since then.
Okay.
I'm glad to say, but that's where I'm a 60s youth, so I grew up in the 60s and 70s.
Right. So during those years, then you're at school, you're doing athletics. They're very, very good at it. Well, and sports in general. Did you have an idea what you would like to become in terms of a profession during your school years or towards the end of your school years?
Yeah, I figured I wanted to be a professional footballer. Um, and literally, if you remember the 1970 Brazil World Cup team, hailed as one of the greatest World Cup teams, I would watch Revellino, Jairzinho, Pele, Gerson, Tostaio, all of those players, and go and practice on my local rec for hours to perfect that piece of skill or perfect that movement. In fact, I studied, even when Maradona came on the scene, Johan Cruyff, Johan Neeskens, all of them players for me was my idols. Even the Kaiser, Franz Beckenbauer, Eusebio, George Best. I can reel them all off that I would go on the park and kick a ball and literally try and perfect the skill that I saw on Match of the Day. Then take it back onto the sports field the next day. I was dedicated to my craft, but I was also in love with cricket because my dad was a love of cricket. So Viv Richards, Gordon Greenwich, Frankie Fredericks, not Frankie, Gordon Greenwich, Desmond Haynes, Clive Lloyd, that pool of Viv Richards, that pool of Jamaican cricketers. So come the summer, I was Kirkley Ambrose or Gordon Greenwich on the rec, clipping man for 4, clipping man for
Caribbean
6.
characters in those days, weren't they?
They were beautiful days, what they done. Yeah.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Great Caribbean characters. I mean,
Yeah.
those were the days. So, how far did you get with your pursuit then, in terms of any of these sporting, activities?
Well, I can honestly say that there's a lot of guys around my age and women who were extremely talented in sports. And the perception of managers at the time, they saw black players not good in the cold, they have to be on the wing. This was the perception, a bit like Asians can't play football. Today, you don't see many British-born Asians in the football, playing top-level football. It was like that for us back in the 60s and 70s. So many of us were overlooked. The game wasn't about power and pace at the time, and many of us were overlooked. But I joined the Royal Air Force in 1980, and things took a huge turn for my sports once I joined the Air Force. But
Okay.
a lot of my peers, and I would argue that there were some players far more gifted than me, who didn't make it, and just as determined as me, who didn't make it. So we got to look at the 60s and the 70s, post-war Britain, still working out where all these black people are coming from and how we are going to manage them and integrate them into, mainstream society. The civil service, the police, the armed services, the NHS, all of them struggled. Even education was struggling to look at what we're going to do with this influx of migration from the Caribbean. I mean, in 1964, I have my, during my research in my PhD, I've got this piece of research from a meeting with the Education Authority in Huddersfield Corporation at the time. There was a question in the meetings with the Education Authority saying, what are we going to do with these retarded children? And
isn't that something?
That's in the minutes. And many teachers were complaining that they don't have the skills to teach these kids with a different language and educationally retarded. That's in the minutes.
That's very, very interesting. Can we go on to something you touched on then, the armed forces? You joined the Royal Air Force. Why did you join the Royal Air Force, and in particular the Royal Air Force, as opposed to the Army, the Navy?
I lost my mother between my 13th year and 14th year, 7, 8 months away from 14 years of age.
Sorry to hear
Me
that.
and my brother became a latchkey kids. My sister had left home, and we were latchkey kids looking after ourselves. My dad worked 12 hours a day. 7 o'clock he'd be leaving the house, and he went back till 7:30 in the evening. So yeah, I was getting into quite a bit of mischief, and perhaps not the mischief my dad would have been proud of, nor my mum. When I look back, I guess I wasn't proud of it. But when you're young, no parenting around during the daylight hours, you get up to all kinds of mischief. Even now, kids would do the same. And I got into trouble a few times with fighting against the teddy boys or the skinheads, or stoning them at times. Then fighting on the streets with sometimes from guys from different neighborhoods. I got arrested a couple of times, and the police officer told me it's the second time the local bobbies at the time, they used to clip around the ear roll and then said, get on your way back in those days.
Yeah.
And he said, if I have to arrest you again, I'm taking you to the police station and I'm charging you. He said, you're a good lad, Milton. You're a good lad. Go and join up, take your energy somewhere and go and do something with yourself. And it reached that point where I'm thinking, well, there's nothing left. I'd already been to court for fighting once. So I joined up. The weirdest thing was all my friends was thinking, he will never stand it. It won't last. It won't last. And
so why the Royal Air Force in particular?
Easiest option, to tell you the truth, because I can swim, but when I like the water, you know what I'm saying? Right? And secondly, what I understood of the army, it was Northern Ireland, Northern Ireland, Northern Ireland. So I thought the Air Force was a good bet. And I'm trying to share my naivety as well. I didn't research. I just took what the police officer said, went straight down to my local recruitment center. And when I walked into the recruitment center, this army guy said, come and join us, we can give you a gun. And will you be in Northern Ireland within 6 months? And I'm going, that's the last place I want to go. So I went upstairs. And joined and asked about PTI. What could I do as a PTI? I took the test. They said, I've qualified for the Royal Air Force Regiment. I said, what's that? They said, lots of sport, lots of jumping out of aircraft. So you'll be running a lot. And I'm thinking, wow, because they saw me in the school profile, how well I'd done at school at sports. Yeah.
Yes.
Big man, when I joined the RAF Regiment, I mean, Swindeby was a real eye opener. But by the time I got to Catterick, oh my gosh. Going outside in the rain, sleeping outside for a week, eating from mess tins. Oh, it was the last thing I ever wanted to do. Yeah, okay. I didn't like the cold. I don't like getting wet unless I've got shorts and chasing a football. Yeah, okay. So, yeah, that was the reason why I joined the Air Force. It seemed the safest bet.
So what was your experience like? First of all, how long did you spend in the Royal Air Force? And
I did 6 + 3, 6 years in the Air Force and 3 years as a reservist.
Okay. What was that? What was that experience like?
Again, as a so-called bad man, joining the military. When I got to Swindeby, I'm not gonna lie, I cried for the first probably 2 weeks.
Did you really?
Absolutely. Nobody ever spoke to me like that, and I didn't grab them up and wanted to rewrite their horoscope. I was a guy who was angry with racism, angry with what racism had done to my father in the house, angry because I'd seen my mum being abused by white young men at the time when I was young, and then to go in the military and then thinking it was a career that I was going to excel and have all of these opportunities, and only to find that right now I'm now in an institutional organization that I can't run, I can't walk, I can't hide. They're telling me what to do and they're telling me in a certain way. I've never been spoken to like that without fighting back or verbalizing my disgust in the way people were talking to me. And you know what it's like, Don, if you open your mouth, they charge you for insubordination. The rules that I first had to endure was very, very hard for me. Somebody coming from the streets of Huddersfield, and my father was a man who didn't bend if he never had to pick anything up, didn't scratch if he never had an itch. I've seen him tell police on numerous occasions what to do when they were stopping him. My dad was a real proud, militant man. And that's what I saw in him as a strength. So if somebody said something to him in the wrong way, he would always argue. So I joined up the Air Force thinking, I'm going to be treated with respect, going to be treated with motivation and aspiration and asked to, you know, I thought I was going to excel, and it wasn't. Swindon was not what I thought it would be, and it didn't give me a good view of the Royal Air Force those first six weeks at Royal Air Force Swindon, where I learned how to march, square bash,
Yeah.
you know, and all of that, right? All those things there.
Yeah. I guess that's the initial stage, isn't it? When you join the military, they try to break you into a militarized sort of person and get to the rules and the regulations. So it's very, very strange, isn't it? I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, very, very strange and very, very tough. I can honestly say though, right, it's weird because when I look back, now I've come out of it, I've been out the Air Force 40 years, I think, something like that. It was what I needed. Seriously, what I needed to get me to start. The 6 years in the military was turbulent for 4 years of it, but I can't sit here and honestly say, hand on heart, that I regret what I went through, because it certainly straightened me out in terms of what it means to be in a team, what it means to wake up every day with a purpose, to
comradeship,
to be a starter and a finisher. Yeah. You know, to be able to achieve beyond what you think you could achieve. Yeah. I got a lot of that determination and aspiration from my father and the military.
Great. So what did you do sort of immediately after leaving the Air Force then?
Well, I struggled with that as well, because it took me about 12 to 15 years to adjust back to civilian life, because as you said earlier on, they break you as a civilian, develop you as a soldier, and then throw you back out onto Civvy Street. And now, you know, my first week when I came out of the military, my friends would said they'd pick me up at 10 o'clock. We were going to go out, yeah? My old friends. 10:30, they still haven't arrived. 20 to 11, they've arrived to pick me up. And I'm vexed, not realizing that for 6 years I've never waited for anybody. Because the military it's always 5 minutes before. And me and them catch up outside on the street. And I didn't even bother go out that night. These are the things that I'm realizing, all the arguments I had in the, you know, I was married at the time, divorce, debt, all the things that the Air Force looked after, paying your bills and everything else. I certainly struggled to readjust with all of those things. The resettlement course was 4 weeks somewhere and they gave you some money. So I struggled. And the first thing I did after about 18 months was I draw some money down from the Princess Youth Trust. I needed my independence. In fact, let me just rewind. I went for 2 jobs. The first job was a heavy goods driving job. And when I went in for the interview, the guy, he was writing like this, and he looked up and he went, "Sign your name there, lad, and we'll get in touch." That was my first interview. The second interview was very similar. And I said, "Well, excuse me, are you going to ask me, can I do the tying and the knots and lashing downs? Are you going to look if my license is clean? Are you going to," and then I just said, in no uncertain terms, I said, "Who's doing this? Beep, 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 beep. Interview. Is it me or is it you?" And I walked out and I said, "Never, never again."
Wow.
But I played football, and word got around that I was back on Civil Street, and the Scottish man called Jimmy Martin, he ran a scaffolding company. Scottish. He understood he understood about racism and discrimination because he was Scottish, and he gave me a job. And I played football for him. So even in the Air Force, I should have been discharged from the Air Force, but on some of the things I did, I was undisciplined at times. I was very angry with the racism and the institutional discrimination. But because I played football for Combined Services, the Air Force, Strike Command, Support Command, for some strange reason, I was kept in, because the Air Force want to beat the Army want to beat the Air Force, the Navy want to beat do you understand what I mean? So I felt...
I fully understand.
Am I making sense here to you on that?
Yeah, I fully understand. Sport is a big thing in the military.
Say again, my friend.
Sport is a big thing in the military. So very competitive. Yeah.
But when I look back, I would say that from I joined my secondary school right through the Air Force, my sporting prowess was exploited. And never really looking at the person inside. So I got the job with Jimmy. Jimmy was a top man, but it was because I could play football and I played for him, yeah? And then I decided to set up my own business. I'd had enough of working for somebody, so I set up a fast food company using the Princess Youth Trust money, and it was called Tony's Fast Foods. And people know me as Tony. Those people who know me a long time call me Tony. So I sell rice, peas, chicken, patties outside the local West Indian club. And
wow.
Yeah, it was really successful. But you know, when you look at food, right, you're either selling it, preparing it, buying it, cleaning up, and preparing for the next.
Right. Yes.
I needed that independence, but it wasn't me. And then when you're waking up and you can still smell the fat in your skin.
Yes.
I can't do this. I'm too vain to walk around smelling of oil.
So I fully get that. So why were you driven into education then? What drove you into that?
Okay, so I realized the only way I was ever going to make something of myself was to go back to school. And I'd met several people by then who were saying to me, "You've got quite a lot of, you're very smart, Milton, you're very smart. And I'm thinking, I didn't think I was smart. So I did an access course, which lays the foundation for you to go to university as a mature student. So I did the access course, and the lecturer, he was a guy who was a Scouser, Liverpool man, and he was a wordster as well. And he was challenging me with loads of stuff. But let me just rewind a bit. I'd got into Black history by the time I was 28, to a point where I read the Malcolm X biography, the whole of the civil rights movement. I read African, and from antiquity to science to cosmology. I just immersed myself into Black history. And that said, I needed to go back to education, and I also needed to go Africa. And when I did my access course, I was arguing with my father, I was arguing with my peers, and the white guy, this white lecturer said, listen here, Ace, you're the one who's changing. Be kind to everybody else. You're not the same.
Okay.
You're not the same person who would just nod his head and agree with your father. You're not accepting those old narratives of what has shaped you to this point. And you're learning new things now, and you're testing and you're pushing the boundaries. So be kind to everyone else, but keep pushing, because you're on the road to something, and it's where you want to take it. And that was the best advice for a long time I'd heard. So I did the access, and then I skipped the degree and went straight onto a master's called Race and Social Policy. And that was a 2-year course. I did 1 year. But by that time I was setting up my own sports program. I had this project called SPACE, Sports Participation and Cultural Equality, where I use sport as a social tool to redirect young people from crime, gang, and try to inspire them in education. And that was very successful. We went to, it was local, regional, national, and international. I ended up in Zimbabwe and Uganda with the project, and Jamaica.
Excellent.
Excellent. So that's what happened. I used sport. I went back to the sports as a self-employed person and generated interest from the military. I brought the military in there. The police were in there. They sponsored the kit. We even played against the Royal Air Force, not the Royal Air Force team, a team from the Royal Air Force, a team from the police. So everything I was doing in the military, I more or less transferred it now back onto Civil Street. And, up to last night, I was talking to one of the guys, one of the young men who was, he was 14 at the time. And I was talking, and I thanked him, and I said, I was moving from a young man to a mature man, and navigating some real dark stuff from military to civilian life. And you was navigating from a young boy to a young man. And you stuck with me. Even when I was military, and they stuck with me, and I have to thank all of them when I see them. I thank them for helping me through that difficult time, even though I didn't realize it was difficult. When I look back, it was. And I think a lot of those sports coaches and gymnasts, people, everybody who puts their time out to community groups, I have to applaud them, because they're helping the next generation. But at the same time, do they actually realize what they're getting back from the youngsters? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
I bet a lot of the youngsters will say the same about you, thanking you for what you did for them.
I guess so, but it's not for me to. I did mine selflessly, yeah. And I guess a lot of things, what volunteers do when they're helping their local community or someone, it's selfless. And it's for other people to make that judgment of you. I'm not saying. I just think there's a humility about what people like who do those kind of stuff do. They give.
Yes.
I will never call anybody who gives to others because when they don't have to. I praise them. I would more question those who have it to give and don't give.
Yes. And the reason I say all of that is that when you do such a program at the level and the standard that you did it, there's bound to be a lot of those youngsters that you've kept off the street and who could have gotten into various mischief, etc. So if you were to speak to them now, they would say, thank you, Milton. I firmly believe that. Absolutely firmly believe that. Yeah.
Just a very quick story though. The young man I was talking to last night, he used to be excluded from school or thrown out of school because he had a similar sort of upbringing to me.
Okay, there you
And I
go.
said to
There you
him,
go.
D, I said, every time you come here, I'm glad you know where to find me. You're not going on the streets, you're coming to where I'm working. I said, join up. I said, it helped me, it broke me, and it was tough. But I was glad when I look back, I think you could do with joining up. And he joined the military and he did 15 years. He's a
Is that right?
decorated veteran. Yeah.
Wow, that's
He's been
fantastic. There
to,
you go. See, there you go.
yeah, no, I
There
know.
you go.
So, time teaches wisdom. It's not the
Yes.
other way around. Yeah.
Yeah. And talking about wisdom, then, Kirklees Local TV. How did that become? How that came about, sir?
Well, I'd run the Space Football Academy for 10 years. We had a couple of pros come through. We developed a few pros there, hundreds of coaches, lots of semi-pros. And then the recession came in 2009. And then my partner at the time saw this ad to develop people of African descent. It was a global application form that the UN, United Nations, were looking at to develop the next generation of diplomats and people who can argue the rights for people of African descent. So I wrote it, put it in, and lo and behold, I got a link back saying I've been accepted. So I went to Geneva for 4 weeks, spent time with 3 people from Brazil, 1 from Colombia, 1 from Haiti/France, America, Panama. I was the only Brit and I was the only European. 1 from
Wow.
Ethiopia, but he was an Ethiopian Jew. And whilst we were there, we were invited to all the big debates, listened to people arguing from one country to the next, listened to all the diplomats. We had an accelerated program on diplomacy, an accelerated program on the human rights, the minority rights, cultural rights, indigenous rights, anything to do with rights for people of African descent. And they were saying that in the next 10 to 15 years, there's going to be a boom in digital news and digital communication. So they recommended us to consider whatever we're going to do to promote what we've gone on and make a change in your local community and region is to go into digital marketing or things like that. So I came back and the recession hit me very hard because I built my business around public sector. And literally when the country's in recession, public services are one of the biggest hit financially. So I said, well, this will be a good as time as any to try setting up my own news channel. So I set up Kirklees Local TV to elevate grassroots organizations, grassroots people, locally and regionally, and profile them in their local community, give them their own voice, give them their own communication. And 14 years later, wow, yeah, look where we are now.
Fantastic.
We average about
Fantastic.
180,000 to 200,000 engagements a month. We're well respected in our local community. God knows how many university students have come through. We've had probably about 62 ones. We've had a couple PhD students come through and got firsts in their masters, then came on placement here. Hundreds of community. We've probably worked with about 900 volunteers in probably 14 years. And there's people who have been here 7 years, 4 years. So I owe it all to them as well as those volunteers who have come, gained skills, and moved on.
Fantastic. I applaud you, sir. That is quite an achievement. And I think a lot of people around UK and in the inner cities could very much learn a lot from yourself. If not duplicating what you do, you certainly set a template that could be duplicated, because there are a lot of stories, especially in our various communities, that needs to be brought to the fore, recorded and told, about us as a people, the forgotten generations.
Yeah. Well, I know your work in Birmingham is very similar to what we do here in Huddersfield, and I'd like to probably interview you soon as well about what you're doing as well, Don, because I think there's lots of mirrors. We're both veterans, and we've both gone into digital media, and we're both trying to elevate our local, national, and regional heroes.
Yes, absolutely. I would be delighted to be interviewed myself. And I know there's a lot more other strings to your bow. There are lots of other things that you do within the community. Because I've looked at your website and seen a whole lot of things going on there. So again, I heartily congratulate you on that. What are the big plans, or any other big plans ahead to do anything that you can talk about?
I think with Kirklees Local TV, we've just received a Heritage Lottery grant to establish a 60-minute documentary called The Armed Services, Huddersfield's Windrush Forgotten Veterans, and a 3-hour educational interactive resource. That's what we're working on currently at the moment. We feel the board of directors and some of our long-standing volunteers feel we can't really develop it anymore. We've excelled in what we set out to do right from the onset. So we're having lots of discussions about where next. We're going to be looking more around private sector, working internationally, and as you said, the template, franchising the model, and taking it to different communities, different regions, perhaps even international communities as well. Because we know how to set these things up now, and we know what it requires in terms of the digital hardware you need, and at the same time, the kind of personnel you need, the training, the vision, the mission, and how you set your objectives according to the landscape you find yourself in. So we're really thinking about that now, and obviously keeping this going as an outsourced archive, because we've got a lot of history on our channel. We archive everything.
Fantastic. That's fantastic.
We celebrate diverse communities as well. So we've done a lot. And you know what it's like, history. We work with history and create history at the same time.
Absolutely.
So we open ourselves up to universities, colleges, local people. So there's a lot to consolidate and make it right, that it's accessible in the right way for the local, regional and international communities to access the stuff we've done.
That's fantastic. I've got to say, you've taken us on quite a journey. And I'm sure if we had more time, we could go deeper and wider and higher and all sorts, and get a lot more from your life. And if you were to go back to your teachers in school, from your beginning of schooling, leading up to the Royal Air Force, and all those people that you've dealt with in so many different ways, and show them what you've done now, they'll probably not believe your achievement. Some of them, some will, because they would have seen your potential, but some probably wouldn't have seen it. That's just amazing.
Yeah. If I can just say that, I still thank them. One of the things I've learned in life is it doesn't matter how bad it was and how good it was. Everybody has contributed to where you are today. And you can't look back and say, I disliked so-and-so because, and you can, but it's not going to get you anywhere. But so-and-so who you disliked enriched you in a way that made you realize what you didn't want.
Yes. Yes.
So
I like that.
Life is a tapestry of things for me that you can't look back all the time, but looking back and understanding why enables you to really understand where you are at present and somehow inform you of the next steps. Yeah. But you
Fantastic.
have to be brave to take those steps. And there's a lot of us who
Absolutely.
want to be something, but not prepared to feel the challenges or the pushbacks and the disappointments. Those are telling you you're getting closer. That's when I look back at my life, you know. I didn't stop wanting something. And I kept pushing and pushing and pushing. Even when I couldn't see it, Luther King said, faith is taking the first steps on the stair, taking the first steps when you can't even see the whole staircase. Yeah. And that's what faith is for me, is to try and, if you want it, wake up with a purpose and never stop believing. And even if it's a little step towards that, keep going, because you will eventually
It's progress. It's progress. There's one question I didn't ask you, and that's from a cultural point of view. I know you're born in Huddersfield and all that, but from a cultural point of view, how do you see yourself? I ask people these questions and I get a lot of different answers. How do you see yourself? Do you see yourself as Caribbean or Jamaican or African or British, African, Caribbean? You know, there's a lot of headings that we've been put under. How do you see yourself?
Yeah. In 1995, I went back to Africa because of the very same question. I was looking around and everybody's got a different take. I'm born here, but I'm Jamaican. Um, I'm born here, but my parents were from Grenada, and my parents was, and the other parent from Barbados. So I guess I'm Grenadian and Barbadian. And when I got into my Black history, as I said to you, at 28 years of age, I realized that I needed to go to Africa, and I got to Africa. And the first African who spoke to me called me Mzungu, which means white man. And I realized that the color of my skin is not necessarily what people judge me for. And then I truly realized what I shouldn't judge myself for. And Luther King said, when something about judged by the content of their character and not by the color of their skins. So by the time I left Africa and came back, I'm very, very clear. I'm an African, Caribbean, British descendant. And that's how I see myself. And if you was to unpick what that means, because there is a philosophy through that, I'm a neo-Pan-Africanist within that. But if you're asking me, generally speaking, who am I? I'm an African, Caribbean, British descendant. I'm an indigenous citizen of the world. Wherever I go, I know my ancestors have trod there before me.
Yes. Fantastic.
But that notion comes from a lot of reading Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, the Civil Rights Movement, Shaka Zulu, Steve Biko, Tutu, all of them, Jomo Kenyatta, Patrice Lumumba, all of these great men, and I mentioned many women there, but Angela Davis, Fannie Lou Hamer, Coretta Scott King, you know, Betty Shabazz, all of these great men and women of color. They wrote their philosophies and opinions, and I've studied them and read them, and it enriches me to be who the person I am today.
That's great.
So you've got to,
absolutely fantastic.
You've got to do the work to be, and when I say the work, because of all the different media angles that people are saying, and when you're watching the media news and you're going to school and you're hearing all of these different narratives about who we are, what we are, it's important you know who you are, and you've got to do that work. And for me,
100%.
I'm very comfortable in my own skin.
Excellent.
And having your integrity is the most important thing.
Excellent. Dr. Brown, I got to say a fantastic thank you for sharing a percentage, I'm going to say a percentage of your life journey with the Forgotten Generations. Absolutely fabulous. I'm sure a lot of people, the public, will listen to your story and get a lot from it. So I've got to say a big thank you once again. Have you got any questions at all for Forgotten Generations? Any?
I guess, yeah, and I guess it's because of the same kind of work we do. Is how do you connect with your local, regional, and international communities? Do you have a database? Or is it on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's very much networking. That word networking is really, really important, and it's not always as easy or even difficult, whichever way you look at it, to do that. It's basically starting off and saying to people, this is what I do, and not being shy to tell people what you do. And once you start saying to people, this is what I do, you will get a percentage of them that goes, oh, wow, didn't know that, want to know more. Here's my card, or here's my number. So it's very much as I journey through life, going around talking to people in various sort of events, always have something to say about your organization, and people will want to know. So from that, also people then tell other people to say, do you know this is going on? And then you get a contact from there. So it's very much, as I say, the big word is networking, and that's where I get a lot of my customer base. And we've now got over 100 members. I encourage people to become a member of the organization, and then the members spread the word to their families and friends and contacts, etc., etc. So that's how we do it.
Yeah. Well, I'm certainly going to get in touch to interview you, Don, and I certainly want to know more, learn more, hear more. And I want to say a big thank you to yourself and also to your audience when this goes out on the Forgotten Generations for giving me this time to share a little bit about what I do and where I see what KLTV can do and want to do.
Brilliant, excellent, and look forward very much with working and collaborating with you, sir, and your team. Thank you very much indeed.
One love, and speak to you soon. One love, and speak to you soon, my brother. Easy now.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.
Take care.